Sitaram, welcome to SWA DHARMA, carried exclusively on Sankhya TV on Thursdays between 6:30 p.m. and 7 p.m. SWA DHARMA, where we study the contributions from approved sources. In this case, for today's program, we'll be focusing on the Holy Ramayana, or if we prefer Manas Charitra, written by Sant Tulsidas. And we go to the seventh and final Kand. Kand being, for want of a better word, section. For Ramayana is comprised of 7 sections, 7 Kandas. The last one being Uttarakhand. The word Uttar means answers or answer, as the case may be. And we are going to focus on 7 questions posed by Garud Maharaj and the answers to which are given by Kak Bhushundji. So, in asking a question, there are 4 types of questions one asks. There is Vivadartha, where it's among the questions, it's the basest among questions, where one asks a question and creates just for the sake of argument. And sometimes it disrupts an entire gathering, an entire meeting, as the case may be. And it's, of course, the lowest type of question. Then there's Pariksha Ki Nimit, where one asks a question just to examine, just to test how much the narrator knows, though he or she may not be privy to the answers. It's just a test that the question is put forward. There's a third type of question which gets a bit better, and Apni Buddhi Dikhane Ki Nimit, whereby one asks a question, knows the answer, is hopeful that the narrator, the orator, may not be privy to the answer. And so that individual who poses the question wants the opportunity to show that he or she knows the answers for self-aggrandizement. Not too good, but still better than the other 2 questions. And the highest question is the 4th here, Sandeha Nivrityartha, where questions are asked genuinely to remove doubts. As an example to such a question, at the beginning of Ramayana, Parvati Mata posed questions to Bhagwan Shiva, the answers to which comprises Ramayana. Some of those answers were narrated by Yagyavalkya to Bharadwaj, by Tulsidas ji to the world, and again by Kak Bhushundji to the world via the medium of Garud Maharaj. And in asking those questions, the first of which, Parvati Mata says, Prathama Sokaran Kahu Bakhani Nirguna Brahm Sagun Bapudhari. She asks, Prabhu, tell me, why is it the Nirgun, the unmanifest form of God, that which the spiritual adepts worship as the absolute, as a jyot, as a light? Why did he have to come down, embody himself, and perform the part of a mere mortal when he could just have waved his magic wand and rectify all that needs to be rectified? So in answer to that question, Bhagwan Shiva began discourse on Ramayana. That is the type of question where Parvati Mata, though she was all-knowing and was familiar with the answers, she asked it on behalf of the world to clear doubts of the world. So we go to question number 1, posed by Garud Maharaj. Pratamahi kahahu nathamati dhira sabate durlabh kavan sharira. And in asking the question, Garud Maharaj points to me. He gives honor, esteem to the narrator. He calls him Matidhira. O Kakji, I know you of stable intellect. I know you have the capacity to deliver the answers. So that honor is bestowed to the narrator. And the first question being Pratamahi means first, Sharid is body, and Durlabh, of course, means difficult. So the first question is, what is the most difficult body to attain? So we might say, well, that's a given. It's, of course, the human body. But we need to tarry a while and examine. There is a series of texts known as Panchatantra, which deals about a lot about the animal kingdom. And in there we will see that is the human being really the most superior in God's creation? Is it not the dog? Because the dogs have a way to show gratitude and the capacity for gratitude which human beings often don't. many of us have pets, so we are familiar with people who have pets, pet dogs. And sometimes, as we all know, we come home from probably a long day's undertakings, short on patience. Dog very lovingly comes to us, wagging his tail and coming, probably sometimes jumping playfully with us. And we are short in our tolerance, short-tempered, and we verbally, sometimes physically, unfortunately, abuse that dog. And this may happen many times for the evening, day after day. And on whichever occasion we might beckon the dog forward, that pet forward, and by either whistling or snapping of the fingers, that dog doesn't carry any baggage, it doesn't bear any grudges. And so that dog comes wagging its tail lovingly to the master, forgetting the 1,000 bad things we do, but just remembering the good thing that we did by probably snapping our fingers, calling him, petting him, giving him food, as the case may be. Turn the page, look to humans. Humans have the negative capacity, the capacity which is not an admirable one at all. Two, we can bestow 1,000 good favors to them, good actions upon them, and the one slip of the tongue, the one misstep, they hold that in mind, debunking the 1,000 good things that we may have done. And they hold that, they bear that type of grudge, they carry that baggage for eternity, till sometimes why we get vexed with people gets lost in translation. And the dog doesn't show these shortcomings. So before we rush into the answer and preempt Garud Maharaj and says, well, human beings are really superior in God's creation, we have to look at the animal kingdom. Again, in Panchatantra, it says there was once a discussion. The animals were contending that they are superior to the human beings. And Lomri Maharaj, the fox, says, well, look at me. I carry a thick fur. And through the hot months and the cold months, I don't ask for a change of clothes. And I'm comfortable there. And to move from one place to another, I go distance, many miles. I don't have to wait and berate the fact that there is not any transportation available. I set foot to my journey and I accomplish without any grudges, without any complaints. Does the human being do that? His argument was that sometimes we need a change of clothes, whether it is for the weather has changed or just for the simple sake of fashion statements, and we fuss about it. And we have to go from one place to another and we fuss about that too. And so the contention went on among the animals, just to bring to the fore that it is not a given that the best or the most difficult body to attain, the prize body, is that of a human being. We have got to look at the animal kingdom. We look at a nice quotation, a relevant quotation from Chanakya Niti. Chanakya was one of the great philosophers of Sanatana Dharma. And he says, in differentiating between animals and man, ahara nidra bhayamaitunani samani chaitani nirinam pashunam gyanam naranam dhiko vishesho, and it continues. But the essence of it is, there are 4 common qualities between humans and animals. Ahar, we eat, they eat. Nidra, we sleep, they sleep. Bhaya, they have fear, we have fear. Maitun srishti, the ability to procreate, to bring forth young, they do it, we do it. So as far as these 4 important facets are concerned, there is an equal standing between man and animal. The only difference, Gyanam Naranam Dhiko Vishesho, what makes man superior to the animal kingdom is Gyan, is spiritual wisdom, is the understanding and the recognition that there is a divine force above. It puts such that understanding comes, it propels us in the direction whereby we need to connect, to make contact with that divine form. So that's why in Sanatana Dharma it says there should be Trikal Sandhya, at 3 points in time in the day, morning time, lunchtime, and evening time around dusk. It is a nice occasion, a very potent times to connect with that supreme being. And in so doing, we display that element of Gyan, of spiritual wisdom, which, bottom line, differentiates us from the animal kingdom. Sumitra, who was the mother of Lakshman. Remember, Sumitra was Bhakti Avatar, the incarnation of devotion. And premised on that, she had the privilege of having not 1, but 2 sons. Whereas Gyan, spiritual wisdom in the form of Kaushalya, had but one son, the Supreme Sri Ramchandra, and Kaikeyi, the other queen, had as the incarnation of karma, had one son, Bharat. But bhakti always wins out. And that love for God won out in the birth of the incarnations, where Sumitra was privileged to have the company and comfort of two sons. And her pronouncement, so thus she was authorized to pronounce as a mother. And it says, Putravati Yuvati Jagasohi Raghuvar Bhakt Jasu Sutahoi Nataru Banja Bali Bali Bari Biyani Rama Vimuksutate Hitani. Sumitra says, a child that is produced that is averse to divinity, that doesn't make any efforts to tread the highway of spirituality, Sutate Hitani, better that child was lost in natural abortion rather than bring such a being into the world. The word, when the quotation is Biyani, in dialect we say when a cow, for instance, produces a young one, we say Biyani, the cow bring a young one. So it's technically Sumitra was making a punishing statement that a child who comes into the world, who is averse to God, is like an animal brings one forth. So too, that mother has brought forth, not a human being, because of its lack of spirituality, but basically an animal, as it were. Punishing statement, but well in order from someone like Sumitra. And the answer to question one comes, and Kakbhushani says, Naratanu samannahi kavani dehi jiva charachari yachataji. Yes, indeed, the human form, the human body is really and truly the one that is the prized body. An answer which we knew, but which we need to delve deeper into. Kakbhushani says, Narakaswarga apavarg niseni jnana virag bhakti sukadeni. That this body, niseni means a ladder. It's a ladder that can take us to hell if on the balance of karma, on the balance of actions, the bad outweigh the good. Then we are destined for Narak. The same body with good actions, with a prevalence of good actions, Swarga, can lead us to heaven. We tarry a while. Here comes Upper Varg. This body is a ladder that can take us to Upper Varg, a sphere that is higher than heaven. And that's why we need to tarry a while, because most time people conceptualize that the highest point above is heaven. No. In Sanatana Dharma, and I think we have declared this in satsang before, but quickly, there are 7 spheres. The upper spheres, as we call them, the lowest of those 7 being Prithvi or earth, and then we have Satyam or Satyalok. And heaven is but, we have earth, we have Bhuvaha, we have Swaha. Heaven is but the third of those 7 spheres. So there are 4 spheres, Bahaha, Tahapaha, Janaha, Satyam. We have those 4 spheres above, and that is the upper Varg that Kakbhushani speaks about. Where does heaven fit into the picture? Heaven is that sphere. If our good actions outweigh our bad, we reach to heaven. And then, yes, we are up for reincarnation again. But if one gets to upper Varg, then the choice of reincarnation, of coming back into this world, is very much a choice. And not, as in the case of heaven, we have to be heading back down. So it's a big difference. This body too, it's a ladder towards Gyan, to spiritual realization. It's a ladder that can produce dispassion of Vairagya. And very important, it's a ladder that can give or can inspire and instill bhakti, devotion, selfless love for God in this very form. So Kakbhushani pronounces and says, yes, the human body is superior in all God's creation, but for these reasons, if we use it as a ladder towards the higher causes rather than allowing it to dwell in bad actions and descend into the netherworld. Kakji continues, Ramayana Uttarkand continues in another excerpt. Sadhana dham mokshkar dwara paina jai parlok samara. We concentrate on the first part here, where the benefits of this body. It's the only form where sadhana, devotional acts, can be performed, and such sadhana leads to moksha, leads to liberation. Liberation not necessarily from this world, but liberating ourselves from the shackles which we place on ourselves by falling to Maya, to the illusion or elusive forces of the world. And sadhana, the spiritual endeavors, are like structured prayer. Some people perform mansik recitations, mansik jap. That does not weigh very heavily for the sadhak or for the spiritual aspirant, the beginner and the one who is on the journey towards self-realization. Because if one does recitations in the mind, then there are no voice projections, no wavelengths by extension that can help to fix the aura of the individual. Hence, when sadhana is performed, sadhana also has its benefits depending on at what level we practice that sadhana. So, mansik jap, reciting prayer in the mind, is good. More beneficial is the actual recitation, the echoing of the syllables of the mantras, if even to ourselves, to fix the aura. There is sometimes, now we up the game, that apart from mantra, we accompany the mantra with an offering, most time, most beneficial, a flower. And this to be done on a daily basis. And so we can be going up the spiritual ladder, that we realize at the end of the day, the full potential of the human body. In performing puja, one also, it's always recommended that just apart from the mantra and the offering, we just add on a bit. Sometimes, and SVV has shown it in most of the workshops, sometimes in the programs, it's just one short deft line that we add on. So for instance, if we are offering a flower, let's say to Bhagwan Ganesh, so we have the flower, and let's say we say Om Gam Ganapate Namaha, and we offer it, that's fine. But we can extract, we can lend potential and voltage to that singular act by just adding on Om Gam Ganapate Namaha, Om Bhurbhasva Sri Ganeshaya Namaha, Pushpam Samarpyami. Very short line. What we have actually said there, and it's twofold, we have converted the offering of the flower from dhyan to a full, which is part of the one of the 16 forms of worship, to a full offering of garlanding Bhagwan Ganesh. And interestingly enough, the word is samarpayami. We did not say samarpaye. If one had said in Sanskrit there are two tenses, two forms for the present tense, we can say I offer, and that offer could mean I offer on behalf of myself. And we can also say I offer on behalf of myself, but also on behalf of my fellow man. A fellow man who might be desirous of getting to God, but has his or her own struggles, doesn't have the wherewithal to perform the act. It is that which is known as parasmay pad. When we say samarpayami, we don't only offer for ourselves, we offer for the struggling fellow man. Because that is how a Hindu conceptualizes life and religion. It is not about a sect of Hindus, but it's about the universal facet of sanat, of dharma. So if we say just that addition of that word, samarpyami, and if we say samarpaya, it's not wrong, but we have diluted the potency of the line. So when we talk about sadhana, there are stages, and we have to develop, just as we expect the child in school to develop and move from secondary or primary to secondary to tertiary, so too we have to develop in that school of prayer and sharpen the message, the inputs from time to time, and be rest assured they are not time-consuming measures. Kagji was asked sankshepahi, in brevity, to give answers to the question posed by Guru Maharaj. So in answer to the first question, which is the body, the most prized body, he says the human body, and he concludes that the answer to that question by making the statement, Kaach kirich badalete lehi karate dari prasmani dehi, that a person who does not practice or get on the pathway of Gyan, of realizing there is a divine form, such person has taken this body, which is a paras, the proverbial philosopher's stone, which has the ability to touch any metal and convert it into gold, very valuable gold, and this body is a paras. But such a person who does not make use of that awareness to the divine has actually exchanged this philosopher's stone for kanchkirich, like costume jewelry, something that is less in value, less durable, etc. So one ought to be mindful, says Karg Bhushandiji, of the value of this prized structure, the human structure. It is indeed a paras. When great athletes are born, they don't just go on to win competitions. There is the touch, the Midas touch of the coach. And we have it in singing too. Singers are not just merely born with raw talent, but is the ustad or the mentor who sharpens them and get them to scale heights that they were not able to scale with just raw talent. So the ability of the human touch, it has these powers. The world remembers Swami Vivekananda in that very famous, his discourse on the very famous World Parliament of Religions. Less we have heard of his guru, Paramhansa Ramakrishna. But the touch, that paras touch, that magical touch of the guru created the full potential of the Vivekananda that we know that the world embraces. So this body, says Karg Bhushandiji, has the power to bestow that magical touch to whichever being. So before Kargji moves into the answer to the second question, which we'll examine the second and third questions shortly, these answers, there were 7 questions. Ramayana has 7 kans, as we have established. And each of these questions were asked in sequence, and they reflect the summary of each of these sections of Ramayana. So in Balkan of Ramayana, the first section of Ramayana, the mainstay of Balkan was the incarnation of God. Vipradhenu surasantahita linamunaj altar nija icha nirmitatu maya gungopar. It states clearly there that the incarnation of Ram, for the reasons stated there, for the sake of the Brahmins, for the sake of the cows, for the sake of the Devatas, Vipradhenu surasantahita, and for the sake of the pious, God incarnated, embodied himself as a human being, and that was the mainstay of Balkan. Hence, Kargji, the question was posed to him, and he says the human body is indeed, because God took human body to perform these miraculous acts. So questions 2 and 3 are posed here. Baradukha kavan kavan sukhabhari. Question number 2, Dukh. Garud Maharajji asks on behalf of the world, tell me about misery. Our interpretation of misery comes a lot from experience, but that does not mean to say those experiences that we have that are miserable, that creates pain, are necessarily the greatest misery. What is really the greatest misery? Is the greatest misery loss of a close one? That indeed is a traumatic experience. That too has its pains. But is it the greatest misery? Then we might say not being able to take care of family's needs. Sometimes these are not wants. If members of the family have wants, we can deal with that. But when the family members have needs, like the student who may not be in a position to, by the parents, to be afforded extra tuition, as the case may be, if it's necessary, because of financial constraints, that too is pain and misery. Then many times people they can't plan ahead. As far as planning a vacation in or out of the country is out of the question, because it's not part of the financial accommodation. It's just not possible. And they could just live virtually from day to day, and that is a painful act, especially for heads of households. So all these are miseries, indeed miseries. How we are going to classify them and quantify and prioritize, we'll allow Kargji to tell us of these miseries, which is the greatest misery. Then the third question, Kamana Sukh Bhari, Sukh being pleasure. And we have said too, a pleasure can be best defined as an interval between two pains. We exemplify Ramayana, pleasure, that Sri Ramchandra was about to be king of Ayodhya. Then came pain. Then conditions were set there where he volunteered himself into exile for 14 years. Then came pleasure again, when he returned victorious over Ravan and was enthroned king of Ayodhya. So there was pleasure, pain, pleasure. And then Sita Devi had to be sent out of the kingdom because of that question put by the Dhobi. Pain again. So pleasure is indeed, it's not a permanent state, it's an interval between two pains. Then what are the greatest pleasures? Is the greatest pleasure the celebratory mood when we find ourselves celebrating birthdays, which is good, provided we do it with a measure of continence, no to excesses, and not getting involved into the vices and the negatives. So that might be the most pleasurable moment for someone. Acquisition of wealth indeed can produce pleasure. And ascension to fame. We're not talking about ill fame here, but good fame. That too provides moment of pleasure. But which of these really is the highest pleasure, the highest pain? So Kagji answers, as far as the pains are concerned, and the miseries, nahi daridra sam dukh jagmahi, that poverty, it's the greatest misery. Not only material poverty, where we are out of pocket, but more than that, spiritual poverty, where we lack the input of a guru or a vidya guru, or we don't avail ourselves of a guru or a vidya guru. Yes, material poverty does, as we can well imagine, produce misery and pain. And the way out of that, one has got to invite the graces of Mother Lakshmi, of the, as we say, the chief of the treasury, who operates under the guidance of Mother Lakshmi, Kubera Devta. And what we mean by these is that if these manifestations, finite forms of God, that one God, are wooed via prayer, and more so allow the prayer to translate in our lives, then at the end of the day, that prayer will help to shape us to have a product, whether it's a talent, whatever. But prayer is supposed to translate, to make this a product that has value, that can now be sold, that skill that can now be sold to earn money, where we rise out of the depth of poverty. So there are ways out of material poverty, and as we stay in satsang, we learn about these mantras, their interpretations, and how we imbibe them and make them part of our life. So there is light at the end of the tunnel as far as misery and poverty are concerned. In answer to the second question, what about spiritual poverty? Through lack of contact with guru or a vidya guru. Jalasankoch vikal bhay meena abudha kutumbi jimi dhanahina. We extract from Kiskindha Kand. And Sri Ram, this was the words of Sri Ram Chandraji. And he pointed out to the world through the meaning of Lakshman. He says, Lakshman, after torrential rains, look down into the valley, and we'll see now that the rains have abated and the sun is up. The little puddles and pools formed here and there, little ponds, now beginning to dry up. And if we notice the fishes, the mean in those ponds, they become sankoch, they become confused, because there's predator, there is the greater predator of man who might fish them out. And that restlessness, we see them darting around, O Lakshman, but Abudha Kutumbi Jibidanahina, so too the householder. If he or she does not exercise buddh or knowledge, he or she will be restless when, as we say, literally the tide is low, when funds are depleted. And we are wondering how we're going to meet various crises. One can find themselves in such a position. And that is where, don't become a buddha, don't become lacking knowledge. That is where the input of the guru will help to lift us out of those types of challenges. This was the second answer. In Ayodhya Kand, there was poverty too, but the greater poverty, as we have mentioned here, spiritual poverty, where Sri Ramchandraji, due to circumstances, virtually walked out of Ayodhya. And when God physically walks out, that indeed is poverty. So once again, by God's grace, we have sat in satsang. We continue our sojourn on the 7 questions and the answers to the 7 questions. And may God keep everyone safe and sound. Have a productive week. And by God's grace again, we sit and meet in satsang next week. Sitaram.